I'm now joined by some of our colleagues from the faculty, and they will introduce our undergraduate courses to you. And we thought we should do this in a broadly geographical order, and we'll start in the East with Japanese studies, introduced by Professor Bjarke Frellesvik.
Hello, thank you very much for watching this. As Professor Rössler said, my name is Bjarke Frellesvik. I'm Professor of Japanese Linguistics, and I'll talk to you about the Japanese course here at Oxford. I will use some slides to do that, so I'll start sharing my screen and hope that I can figure out to make the technology work. I hope this is now visible to everyone. It should say Japanese at Oxford and my name, so you can see what it looks like. Why study Japanese? There are many ways of answering that question. I think the main reason, or the two reasons perhaps, is because Japanese is interesting and because you're interested in it. Those are really especially the second part is really the main reason that you should consider studying Japanese. Everybody these days has some images of Japan, everybody in this part of the world at least, that would range from Pokemon, which we may have played with when we were kids, manga and animated stories and films. Here's one called Fireflies, modern history, Second World War. Here's an image from Hiroshima, which was the first city to be bombed with an atomic bomb. To high technology, Japan is very advanced in technology. Robots is something that they are very good at producing and using, not just for playing the violin, but for many other things as well. Many people will be familiar with cityscapes and images from Tokyo, from this huge metropolis, 30 million people living there. It's full of life all the time, even these days. Japanese food, sushi is well known by everybody in this country, and hopefully you like it. It's not all there is to Japan, though. Japan is also the origin of what is often, and maybe some of my colleagues will later dispute this, but what is often said to be the first novel in the world is called The Tale of Genji, a very long piece of literature written at the very beginning of the 11th century. Japan is a place where old and new meets all the time. Here's an image from a ceremony in the traditional Shinto religion, where people bring their laptop computers to be blessed by the Shinto priest so that the laptop computers can work better. Here's a Buddhist monk in the middle of a busy street. All of these things are things that we encounter when we think of Japan and when we especially visit Japan. Some of you may have become interested long before this in the Japanese martial arts. Here's karate. These are things that are both very, very Japanese, but also quite recent. Many people think that they go back a long way, but in fact, karate and all the other martial arts in Japan, judo, aikido, and so on, have quite a short history there, but now they have become Japanese. This particular scene is from a film called High Kick Girl, and you'll appreciate why when you see this image here. Now, whatever your interest in Japan might be sparked by, you should seriously consider studying it at university. And why should you study it here at Oxford? I think there are two main components to an answer to why you should do that. One is our course structure. We have a dedicated single honors 4-year course for Japanese, as for most of our other languages. We have a year abroad where students spend a whole year in the country, in Japan in this case, in the second year, whereas many other universities do this in the third year. We teach language from scratch, that is, beginners can join, you don't need any previous knowledge. We have a very wide range of specialized options that you can study in the third and fourth years of the course after you come back from the year abroad. So that's what is the course structure and content. Resources here in Oxford are fantastic for studying Japanese. In general, teaching in Oxford takes place in small classes. It's very personalized and personal, either small classes or even smaller groups that we call tutorials. We have probably the best Japan library in Europe, and I say Europe just to be cautious. It is one of the very best Japan libraries in the world. We have specialists on a huge range of subjects within Japanese studies. We have more Japan researchers and specialists here in Oxford than anywhere else in Europe. And then there are the students. The students are actually one of our greatest resources. If you are a student here, you will be together with other students, obviously, who are interesting, intelligent, and interested in what you're studying. And that is actually a very important part of studying at Oxford. Learning outcomes, or as it's called these days, or really what you get out of it, what you get out of studying Japanese here. You get some Japan-specific outcomes. You learn modern Japanese language to a very, very high level, both in spoken and written form, so that you can conduct business fluently in Japanese. You have to learn classical Japanese language, one of the few universities in the UK, well, actually the only university in the UK where you have to do that, and one of the few where you can do that. And you acquire a lot of both general and in-depth specialized knowledge of Japanese history and culture in all its many facets. You can study an additional language, Korean, Chinese, or Tibetan, and if you do that, you will, of course, acquire facility in those languages. More generally, you become very good at writing essays. You become very good at researching things, finding out things, even at short notice, and writing succinctly and clearly about these things. And you will have capacity for heart-sustained work, because there's no way you can complete a course here in one of our languages without working hard for a long period. What do you need to study Japanese here at Oxford? Not very much, but it's very important what you do need. You need to be bright, you need to be hardworking, and you need to be motivated. You need to be able to study and learn a new foreign language. And you need to do really, really well at your school subjects. You need to achieve 3A grades at A level. Those are the main things. Do you need to know any Japanese? No, you don't. As I mentioned earlier, we teach Japanese from scratch, so beginners can join. More than half of our students are beginners. The remaining students have learned some Japanese before coming here. Maybe they've done A-level in Japanese, but you don't need to do that. You can come here without having studied Japanese at all. We don't have any requirements for particular A-level subjects that you need to do. We think that it's important that you need to be able to demonstrate somehow that you're able to study and learn a foreign language. That need not be by having done an A-level in a foreign language. But that's really it. That's what you need to do to be able to study here. Now I'll say a little bit about the Japanese language. This is a sample of Japanese language. And for those of you who know no Japanese, will appreciate that this looks very different from English, for example, or any other language written in the Latin alphabet. This sentence reads, Nihongo wa muzukashiku nai desu ka, and means, isn't Japanese difficult? It means that by virtue of the different bits of the sentence meaning what I've put here in the different colors. So the first word, Nihongo wa, means Japanese. Then comes the word meaning difficult, and then something that means not. And together with the word difficult means is not. And then the final bit turns it into a question. So you can see the grammar, the word order is somewhat different from languages that you're used to learning. But I think the answer to the question, isn't Japanese difficult, is no, not really. Japanese is not a difficult language. The script is difficult in the sense that it takes a lot of hard work, but the language grammatically is not very difficult. And so if you put time and effort into learning it, you can learn it. Remember the karate girl from before? The outcome of this encounter was that she slayed the monster. Japanese is not a monster to be slain, but it is something that needs to be conquered. And if you put in the time and the effort, you can conquer it. So I hope very much that if you are at all interested, you will apply to study Japanese here. And if you do, we'll see you when we have admissions interviews. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Fellesvik. And we will now move on geographically from Japan to China. And the BA in Chinese will be introduced by Professor Henrietta Harrison.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor of Chinese History, and when I put this talk together, I I assumed you're all going to be interested in China. And if you're not interested in China, you should be interested in China. It's a huge country. It's really important. It's having a big impact on the world at the moment, as you could even, however little interest you have in international affairs, you must be noticing China's impact in the last year or so. But also its history and culture, also completely fascinating and really fun to study. And Chinese is a really useful degree to have for your later career. So our undergraduate Chinese course is about half learning Chinese language and about half learning about China. And we teach, as with Japanese and other languages in Oriental Studies, we teach the language in both its modern and classical form. So for modern Chinese, the course starts from scratch, but we also take quite a lot of students with GCSE Chinese. People have studied in all sorts of ways, from local Chinese Saturday schools. Some people have it in their schools, all sorts, especially in Scotland, people seem to study GCSE Chinese, or not GCSE, whatever it is you do in Scotland, sorry, in school. And we have occasional candidates with A-level Chinese. If you haven't ever tried Chinese before, please go online and make sure you like it. You don't want to start doing a degree in a subject it turns out you don't like learning. There are lots of excellent free websites and lots of people. We have lots of good students who've done quite a lot of self-study in advance. We also teach, so that modern Chinese is a big part of the class. We also teach classical Chinese. That's the way Chinese was written up to the 1920s. So all of China's ancient literature, culture, and history, and that gives you access to it. All those famous things like Tang Dynasty poetry or ancient history, those are all available to you once you can read classical Chinese. It's also really important for improving your modern Chinese because it's still widely part of the written language today. So that's the language side of the course. The other course is what we call studies. So that's like everything about China, both ancient and modern, from all sorts of different angles. So we have students who are interested in what's going on in the news now in China and Hong Kong, for example. We have students who are really into Taoism and ancient philosophy. We even have some students who like history. I teach history, so we manage some students interested in history. We have students who are into art and poetry. We have students who are interested in international relations and China's relations with the rest of the world. We have students who've perhaps studied Mao Zedong and the Chinese Communist Revolution in school and are really interested in that. And all these topics are covered in our big survey courses, and then we have options. So we have options on, the options change, but we have things like China's international relations, Chinese art, Chinese literature and film, the Chinese legal system. It's a really wide range, ancient philosophy. And unlike at other universities, because we teach you as a small group of students, all of whom do Chinese, you do all those options reading original Chinese materials. Which is really fun and exciting. The structure of the course, it's very heavily front-loaded to language learning. So we do a lot of language learning at the beginning. The first year, it's a lot of modern Chinese and classical Chinese, plus a big survey of all of Chinese history, culture, and society, what they call Yao, that's the ancient Chinese emperor, to Mao. Actually, it goes beyond Mao, because obviously we go all the way through to Xi Jinping. Then in the second year, you get to go to China, and study the language. So that's a year abroad, and it's a year abroad intensively studying the language. And then in your third and fourth years, you come back and you do more Chinese language, but also options on modern and contemporary China and dissertation. And we have students writing on everything from friendship in the 18th century last year to blockchain in online legal disputes. That was the year before last. And those were both really top prize-winning dissertations. Students from the course go on to a variety of careers, but I'd say there are kind of three or maybe four big lines. So we have a significant number of students who go into either the city or the law. So we have had in recent years a lot of students who went into due diligence, looking up about Chinese companies for financial companies in London. We also have a fair number of students who go on to conversion to law for big city companies, which would like a Chinese speaker. We have had a number of students who wanted to be entrepreneurs, setting up businesses that work with China. We also have quite a few students who go off to China to work there after they graduate. Being a native English speaker who's bilingual in China is often the best way into jobs in the big multinationals. And then you might end up in, or you would hope to end up, or you might not, end up back in the UK later in your career. And then, of course, there are the people who do just whatever you might do with any other humanities degrees, the completely random jobs, one of our recent students went off to become a répétiteur, that's a piano player for musicals in London. So there's an extraordinary range of things that you might do, but we would really welcome to have you come and do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And from China, we now travel to India. And Dr. Victor Davella will introduce the BA degree in Sanskrit, which is the ancient Indian language.
Hi, thank you. My name is Dr. Victor Davella, and I am the lecturer in Sanskrit here at Oxford. And I am responsible primarily for the teaching in the BA course. I'm very happy that you're interested to learn Sanskrit. India, just like China, is another one of these incredibly massive and rising countries on the globe right now, and it has an incredibly long and fascinating and varied history, much of which is rooted in the ancient language of India, Sanskrit. So the primary goal of our course, and this will occupy you in your first year, will be the learning of the Sanskrit language and obtaining a solid mastery of it in a very quick period of time. So this means that more or less by the middle of the second term, you will actually be reading and writing Sanskrit, this classical language, in the script that it is mainly written in today, namely Devanagari. This is what you may recognize from typically Indian signs and the like. The mastery of Sanskrit will include a large range of texts that will be studied in the course of the 3 years. This is from the very beginning, the Vedic period. These are very old and ancient texts that have many similarities to ancient Greek and Latin and are very useful for the study of comparative linguistics. We study the epics. These contain the major stories that are even reproduced nowadays in Bollywood movies. We study poetry, we study narrative literature, and we study, of course, more complex philosophical and religious texts. So really, it's a huge span, and it's a language that allows you to go off in any number of directions during the course of the 3 years that you would be here. In addition, however, we also seek to demonstrate the relevance of classical Indian civilization into the present day by exploring themes such as the origins of the caste system, the impact of colonialism on the study of India, and of course, being here at Oxford and in the UK, this is an incredibly relevant topic. And indeed, we also look at more popular themes such as the development of yoga, how Bollywood looks back into the classical topoi of earlier Sanskrit poetry. And so all of this sort of really organically rises out of the study of Sanskrit. So just to give you a little bit of an overview, as I said, when you come, you don't need to have any prior knowledge of any Indian language or any other language per se besides English. We will take care of all of the teaching from the very beginning. It is helpful, of course, to have some prior knowledge of a classical language or to be familiar with how one goes about learning a classical language. But we have plenty of people here to help you along the way. And it will be difficult, certainly, but everyone ends up doing very well in the end. So the course begins in the first year. And in addition to simply learning the language, we try also to give you a solid foundation in various aspects of Indian history, of how the early Vedic period developed, how Sanskrit developed from Indo-European. And also we have a number of essays that the students write in the small tutorial groups. This is usually 2 or 3 students with either myself or one of my colleagues. And these essays cover a number of topics, including the text that we are reading. So if we're reading something from one of the ancient Indian epics, we will also have an essay dealing with that epic. The famous Bhagavad Gita, which many people perhaps have heard of. This is one of the holy texts of Hinduism. We will read from that and then in the original, and then you would write an essay on it as well. The second year is really an exciting year for you because we not only continue to learn Sanskrit. And by this point, after having read for an entire year now, you are basically able to read this classical language with some fluency. But at this stage, you will also begin to expand your linguistic abilities in any number of directions. So one of the great things about the Institute here and about studying at Oxford is that we're not restricted simply to Sanskrit, but you can branch out into Old Iranian side. So if you're interested in Persia, we also offer as a secondary language Avestan. This is the language of Zoroastrianism. If you're very interested in Buddhism, you can learn Tibetan, or you could do the Pali, which is the language of the Theravada Buddhism. And of course, you can also learn Hindi. And so if you want to have expand into the modern period within India, you can also take up Hindi in your second year. And so this gives you a really very broad foundation, but of course, at the root of this will be Sanskrit. By the end of the second year, you will also have the opportunity to develop one of your own interests. So you have basically two areas that are two opportunities to deepen particular interests that you have, and we tailor your program for the third year according to what your chosen area and special area of interest is. This can be any number of topics. We've had people work on grammar, we've had people work on Buddhism, we've had people even work on food and recipes in classical Sanskrit. Traditionally, after the second year, we usually give students the opportunity, that is, we give them the funding, to go to India and to experience, even though we're studying an ancient culture, when you actually go to India and see and feel and smell and taste all of these things in the country where the language developed, it vastly improves your understanding and appreciation of this classical and what some people would consider a dead language. It really comes to life, so to speak. Hopefully in the future, this will be continue to be possible. After you come back, in the third year, we continue to read more advanced texts, and you continue to look into and research your areas of special interest and develop your thesis. Along the way, you will continue to do these individual essays. We do not usually have a very large number of students, so everyone really has quite a lot of individual one-on-one attention, either reading Sanskrit texts or discussing your topics, discussing secondary literature. By the end of the third year, you will submit a dissertation and you will be examined in a wide range of Sanskrit texts, as well as your secondary language, whatever that might be. Although studying Sanskrit, of course, lends itself to an academic life, and indeed many people go on to either a graduate program or to even teach Sanskrit, the knowledge of India and the knowledge of Indian culture that you would obtain from the degree would be very helpful in any number of jobs, especially given how many, especially in the business world and other areas where you might be interacting either with people in India or people from India. Well, I think that's about all I have to say for now. Thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to your application.
Thank you very much. And we move on from India and ancient India to Persia. And the BA in Persian will be introduced by Professor Edmund Herzig.
Thank you, Ulrike. Why study Persian? Today, Persian is spoken by tens of millions of people. The largest concentration are in Iran, but they are also in Afghanistan, in Tajikistan and other parts of Central Asia, as well as among diaspora communities in North America, Western Europe, and globally. Learning Persian will allow you to communicate with this vast community of Persian speakers and to gain a first-hand understanding of their lives and the places and societies they belong to. As an Indo-European language, Persian may be a bit easier to learn for English speakers than most other Oriental languages. Though make no mistake, the language learning element of the Persian course at Oxford is demanding. So choose Persian because it interests you, not because you think it is a soft option. For the past 1,000 plus years, Persian has been one of the main languages of the Islamic world. It is written in the Arabic script and has a high proportion of Arabic words. So learning Persian is a gateway to understanding modern and pre-modern Islamic cultures and societies. Persian is also an ancient language, with the first written form dating back to the times of the ancient Persians, who famously fought the Greeks in the 5th century before our era. At Oxford, you can study the ancient forms of the language, Old and Middle Persian, as well as the New Persian language of the Islamic era. That is because compared to most universities, we have a large number of staff working in the field of Persian and Iranian studies. Compared to many languages, including English, Persian has changed relatively little over the centuries, meaning that within the first year of study, you can begin to read and understand 1,000-year-old poetry, which is fun. For many students, studying the ways that language and literature have developed over time is one of the most fascinating aspects of the course. Persian literature is exceptionally rich and varied. Persian speakers take special pride in their poetry, from the epic Shahnameh or Book of Kings of Ferdowsi to the romances of Nizami, the love lyrics of Hafez, and the mystical Masnavi of Rumi. Modern Persian poetry and prose is also exceptionally interesting, including some outstanding authors, such as the vegetarian misanthrope Sadegh Hedayat and the passionate and defiant woman poet Furu Farrokhzad. Much of modern literature opens a window onto Iranian society of its time, bringing the study of history to life in the pages of novels and short stories. It's a wonderful literature to learn to read in the original, to study, and to translate. And a large part of your BA course in Persian is devoted to literature. There are many other fascinating aspects of Persian culture that you will also encounter, from medieval miniature painting to contemporary film, for which we have a subscription to the largest online film library for modern Iranian cinema. There are also many opportunities to study different periods of Iranian history, particularly if you choose to concentrate exclusively on Persian. Depending on your interests and your knowledge of other languages, Persian combines very well with the study of other languages. Arabic and Turkish are popular choices, as are Old and Middle Persian, Hindi and Urdu, and Hebrew. And if you want to combine Persian with a European language, there are plenty to choose from French to Russian. We have even had one student who studied Persian with Celtic. Because relatively few students choose Persian, the language classes are always small, and there is lots of small group learning throughout the course. Language classes are taught by native speakers of Persian, and many students achieve an impressive level of fluency by the end of the 4th year of the course. So if you like learning languages, thinking about literature and history, and have an interest in Iran, the Middle East, and the Islamic world, then Persian might well be for you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And we will now time travel into the most ancient periods that you can find in our faculty. That is ancient Egypt and the ancient Near East. And the BA in these subjects will be introduced by Dr. Frances Reynolds.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted that you're here and you're interested potentially in this course. As Ulrika has said, my name is Dr. Fran Reynolds. I'm one of the teaching staff in Ancient Near Eastern Studies, and I work on the history and culture of ancient Iraq. So what does Oxford hold for you if you're interested in Egyptology in the ancient Near East? Well, we offer a 3-year degree which focuses particularly on reading the ancient texts in the original language and the original script. Alongside the work on texts, we also complement this with lectures and classes in history and aspects of ancient culture. Our course is unique in that you can combine elements of ancient Mesopotamia with elements of Egypt, and the two sides of the course speak to one another. It's a unique opportunity, an exciting intellectual challenge. It's a chance to go back to the 4th millennium BC in ancient history and to study civilizations which are foundational to many areas of the world. The way our degree is structured is that you specialize in either ancient Egyptian or ancient Akkadian. I think ancient Egyptian and hieroglyphs are probably known to many of you already, Akkadian is probably a little bit more obscure. It's a Semitic language related to Arabic and Hebrew, and it's written in cuneiform script, usually on clay tablets. You focus on one of these languages in your first year, and that is the core of the first year of study. But alongside small language classes, as with other subjects you've heard about, our groups tend to be small, particularly for language lessons. You also study the history and culture of both the ancient Near East, particularly ancient Iraq, and also ancient Egypt. After the first year, you continue with your main language. You dive into text in more depth, you start specializing, you can tailor elements of your degree, but you also have a chance to pick up a second subject. Now, this can be a language, for example, Arabic or Hebrew, Aramaic and Syriac together, Old Iranian, or it can also be a non-language option of archaeology and anthropology. We find the choice of subjects in our degree gives students the flexibility to focus on what they're really interested in. We find some specific pairings. If you're particularly interested in Egypt, you might have Egyptian as first language and Coptic as a second. If you're particularly interested in Mesopotamia, Akkadian would be your main language, and you might pick Sumerian, or if available, Hittite as a second language. So in your second and third years, you're combining your main subject with your second one. Now, I should say that although the core of our degrees is actually reading the ancient texts in the original languages and scripts, we treat all the texts as ancient artifacts. These written inscriptions are on ancient surfaces. When we can, we read texts from original objects. We also read texts from photographs. And although I should stress our degree isn't an archaeology degree, and for example, in our main subjects, there's no compulsory fieldwork element, we are keenly aware of the materiality of text. One of the special things about Oxford is that you have the chance to work in the Ashmolean Museum, which has outstanding collections in both Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia. Students regularly take artifact classes in the museum, looking at a wide range of objects, learning how to handle ancient artifacts. There are also opportunities to write dissertations related to the museum collections. In addition to the Ashmolean, we have the Griffith Institute, founded in the 1930s, which holds an extraordinary range of archival material, including Howard Carter's papers on the Tutankhamun excavation. Again, students sometimes work in the Griffith for dissertation topics or indeed as interns. Library resources too are great across the whole range of languages, including the subsidiary ones that I've mentioned. So what do you need to study this degree? If you're interested in the ancient world, you're interested in languages, you like decipherment, you're interested in history, well, you may be relieved to hear we don't expect any prior knowledge at all in either Akkadian or Egyptian. All our courses are for complete beginners, starting from scratch. We're looking for real potential for the course in terms of interest and commitment, openness to learning new languages and scripts, and learning about different cultures. I should say too that you can combine our degree with a subsidiary subject in classics. This is another route students take. And apart from our degree in Egyptology and ancient Near East, you can study Egyptian or Akkadian as a subsidiary subject, along with other subjects offered by our faculty that you'll be hearing about, including Arabic, for example, and other subjects too. So I hope I've managed to convey how flexible our course is. It's going to equip you with a wide range of skills in analysis, decipherment, essay writing, analysis of all sorts of material things, as well as text. You might be wondering about future destinations for our graduates. Well, some of our students go on to further study, some end up working in museums, but we also have a wide range of tracks following on from the degree. For example, recent graduates have gone into business strategy, they've gone into teaching, the police, and even actually a pastry chef. So I think nothing is ruled out if you study Egyptology and the ancient Near East. Thank you very much for listening. If you have more questions, our handbook is downloadable from the faculty website, and you can always contact tutors if there are matters you'd like to discuss.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. And we now go to the Arab world, and the BA in Arabic will be introduced by Taj Kandura.
Hello, my name is Taj Kandura, and I'm a member of the teaching staff here in the Oriental Institute, where there is a large number of people devoted to the teaching of Arabic, many of them native speakers, others are non-native speakers. So you will have both sides of the coin. I'm going to confine myself strictly to the language side. As for the archaeological side, the archaeology of the Middle East, history of the Middle East, international relations of the Middle East, I think it would be a better idea to look this up on the faculty website. When you do any other language, probably especially European languages, you get a lot for free. When you do Arabic, you are not going to get anything for free. Just to cite one example, to start with the Arabic alphabet, we write from right to left. In English, we write from left to right. And the sentence structure is a bit different. But I would better add, if you are looking for a challenge, definitely you are going to get it with Arabic. It's an interesting language. At the beginning, probably it might look not very friendly because of what I have just said. But as it begins to unfold, definitely you are going to find it friendly, and it's a language that is going to motivate you, take it from me for the rest of your life. Always there's a new challenge coming up. For the alphabet of the Arabic language, 28 letters, and because it is Arabic, we have to argue. There's another letter about which Arab grammarians have been arguing for the last 2,000 years. Whether this letter is part of the Arabic alphabet or not, to this day we don't know. And this letter is called the Hamza, like the glottal stop in Cockney, bo'el, a little. If you know how to produce that sound, you will have absolutely no problem producing this Arabic sound. There are other 4 or 5 Arabic sounds that might cause a little bit of a difficulty for the native speaker of English to pronounce, but it is our business here in the Oriental Institute to drill you heavily on those sounds, and you will have absolutely no problem producing them correctly once you have finished your course. This language, the origins of this language to this day, again, are not known. Some people say it is the Arabian Peninsula, other people say no, it is East Africa, but never mind. With the arrival of Islam, there is a respected body of literature in pre-Islamic Arabia. That is something that we are going to study here. Here, the faculty is very well equipped. There is quite a large number of professors who are specialists of classical Arabic. You will be properly guided in that respect. The arrival of Islam, as you know, in the 7th century, from a language spoken by a group of Bedouins in the middle of Arabia, and then this language, therefore, to this day, is Arabic liturgical language, or is it not? We don't know. Still, it's an issue for debate, and this is one of the things that we will be talking about and discussing at length with you when you come here. Then, with the expansion of the Islamic Empire, Arabic also ventured further afield from Spain in the west to China in the east. Side by side, it's a liturgical language. It's also a secular language because there are people of other faiths, Christians, Jews, of other denominations of all kinds, lived under the umbrella of the Islamic Empire, and they contributed immensely to the development of that empire. Then one small thing that might annoy my Turkish colleagues here is that it's a faith. You cannot confine, nobody owns a faith, really. Arabs probably believe that Islam is their sole possession, their monopoly, but the Turks and Persians beg to differ. And the arrival of the Ottomans on the scene, the building of the Ottoman Empire, and the Arabs themselves become subjects, colonized by the Ottomans, and probably the fall of Baghdad, that is a historical site in the 13th century, and then some linguists say that Arabic ceased to function during this period from the fall of Baghdad in the middle of the 13th century to the arrival of Napoleon in Egypt in October 1798, They say during this period, Arabic ceased to function. Actually, there's evidence that because there are travelers from the inside the Arabic-speaking world itself who went to Baghdad and Morocco and elsewhere, and they were shocked by the lack of competence of native speakers of Arabic, especially the imams, when reading the Friday sermon on the pulpit inside the mosque. They were not able to produce their sounds correctly. Probably, largely, people were made illiterate because Turkish was the official language of the empire, and Arabic was relegated to being the language of the liturgy, the clergy, and not of a very, very significant role to play in the running of the administration of the empire. They say Arabic ceased to function during this period, and therefore this huge gulf between what they call written Arabic and spoken Arabic. Again, this is not as bad as it looks. Yes, there is some sort of gap or a gulf between written Arabic and spoken Arabic, but it is not as potentially serious as some linguists probably tell you. No, we will have, in so little time, we'll have absolutely no problem communicating effectively and producing our sound correctly with native speakers of Arabic from Morocco to Bahrain in the Arabic-speaking world, and elsewhere. Of course, Arabic is now one of the dominant languages, and it's also one of the languages of the United Nations. It's a language of diplomacy, it's a language of news media, and so on and so forth. Well, as I said, it's a language, become a language of empire, and who is an Arab to this day, we don't know. If you look at my features, probably might say, oh, where is this guy from? And it's a legacy of an empire. Probably you might see some Arabs who are as white as you are, some Arabs who are as dark as I am, or even darker. But they say kullu Arab. That means it's all Arabs. And the language, despite the linguistic variation in this language from Morocco, to put you in the background, look at American English, Canadian English, Welsh English, Irish English, Scottish English, New Zealand English. There is mutual intelligibility between all of these native speakers of English. More or less, there is, to a large extent, a mutual intelligibility between these native speakers of Arabic from Morocco to Bahrain. And therefore, I would probably be able to divide it into varieties such as Moroccan, North African Arabic. Moroccan, probably I don't want to be a nationalist or Islamist, but the nationalists prefer to divide it into Greater Morocco, Nile Valley, and Levantine Arabic and the Gulf. So varieties of Arabic, we have Gulf Arabic, Levantine Arabic, Arabic of the Nile Valley, and Arabic of North Africa, or Moroccan Arabic. I mean Greater Morocco. By Greater Morocco, I mean Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, and even Libya, which is on the preface between Egypt and Tunisia, which is part of Greater Morocco. This tells you about the diversity of the Arabic-speaking world. It's an interesting word. As I said earlier in my presentation, it's a challenging language. I remember when someone told me, one of the former professors here in this department said, the first 10 years were difficult. Probably that is could be a little bit off-putting, but it's not. They were not difficult at all. Trust me for this. It depends on what you want for language. Unlike English, probably you'll have serious difficulty understanding Chaucer or Shakespeare. In Arabic, it's not as difficult. You will have absolutely no problem on finishing your degree here, reading modern Arabic novel, modern Arabic poetry, and that is also feeds into your reading of classical Arabic poetry. Arabs to this day hate to admit that. They say it's the way Arabic prose developed is different from the way English prose developed. As I said earlier, the Turkish, the arrival of the Ottomans on the scene, but still Arabs have what they call istilham, seeking inspiration from the past. Arab poets, Arab writers, always. I hate to say this, like someone trying to see your back, you can't see your back, definitely. But for the Arabs, I think their past is very important to them. That is why classical Arabic feeds into modern Arabic, and that is a issue of istilham, the one I have just cited. And again, modern Arabic probably relies heavily on classical Arabic in its vocabulary and grammar. And probably that is all that I have to say. And I thought that some of you might be here, and I was preparing myself for a much more interactive kind of approach to this. But let me stop it here, and I hope that might convince some of you to develop an interest in what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And we move on from the Arab world to Hebrew and Jewish studies, and that will be introduced by Professor Alison Salveson.
I'm Alison Salveson. I'm the subject coordinator for Hebrew and Jewish studies. Hebrew is a member of the Semitic group of languages, so it is closely related to Arabic, though you may, if you've seen Hebrew written, it's actually written in a very different way, but the structure of the language has a lot of similarities to Arabic, even though it's probably less complex grammatically overall. In both cases, there is a sort of three consonantal root structure, as we call it, which means you have three consonants and you can add suffixes and prefixes and vowels to form different patterns which have different meanings. So it's a very logical language, much more than, say, Indo-European ones from that particular perspective. So those principles are quite difficult to pick up. And the question is, why study Hebrew? It's quite a minor language compared with Arabic, for instance. But Hebrew has a very long history. It starts several hundred years BC, and it comes right up to the present day as the spoken language of 9 million people in the state of Israel. And although, of course, the foundational document is the Hebrew Bible, known in Christian circles as the Old Testament, and that is really foundational for the whole of Jewish culture, really. But there's a lot more to Hebrew than that. There are also the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, which contain much more than what you would normally think of as kind of orthodox scripture. There's a lot of religious literature, like the writings of the early rabbis, which are fascinating documents of discussions of law, discussions of how scripture should be understood. There's a lot of poetry all the way from biblical times to modern Israel, all of which is really fascinating, and particularly from the medieval period, from Spain and from Egypt, where Jews had settled. There are many medieval documents and letters that were preserved by complete accident in a synagogue in Cairo. And these are being extensively studied these days to recover the kind of lives that Jews in Egypt lived. There are modern Israeli Hebrew novels, there are plays, there are short stories, films, and of course you may well now have seen on Netflix and so on some of the Israeli dramas. The first year of the course consists mainly of learning language as the base for the study of Jewish culture, and that is really the bedrock of the rest of the course, because it's quite difficult to pick up the principles of Hebrew to begin with. Initially it's very difficult, and then it gets a good deal easier. There's a lot of very small classes, and there are tutorials to back that up, and some lectures on the background and culture. Now, you can study Hebrew on its own. You can study it as just the first year of a Jewish studies degree, where you go into the culture and essays and the sort of topics that you might study, for instance, the Holocaust, modern Hebrew literature, Christianity, Jewish-Christian relations, Jewish-Muslim relations, for instance, various different stages of Jewish history. So there's a lot of different options there. Hebrew can also be studied alongside another language, a modern European language like German or Spanish or Italian or French, or it can be a subsidiary with a classics language like Latin or Greek. It could be a subsidiary to Arabic, Arabic as a major language and a major component of the degree, or the other way around, with Arabic coming as a 3 papers within the much larger Hebrew degree. So a number of different combinations, and it's also possible to study Yiddish. Resources in Oxford are extensive. We have wonderful specialist teachers, both of language and of the culture and literature. We have really excellent libraries. Many of the biblical translations produced from the 16th century onwards were based on texts and so on that are held in our libraries, and there are a lot of very important manuscripts. You can study the language from absolute scratch. There's no problem at all there, and you will be taught to write and read and speak fluently. So it is possible to speak modern Hebrew and be understood quite easily. The year abroad is usually in the third year. It's not compulsory. It can be the third year of a 4-year course, or you could spend 3 years in Oxford and just go to Israel to work on the language during the summer vacations, for instance. For the combination with a modern European language, the year abroad would be in the second year and would be split between Hebrew and the modern language. Learning Hebrew consists a great deal of hard work, as it does with other Oriental Studies subjects, a lot of self-discipline and intellectual curiosity about how this very small group of people and quite a narrow textual basis actually influence world culture and continues to influence world culture, has an impact on Christianity and on Islam and the relationships between those three religions over many centuries. What you need to apply and to be accepted are, there's no particular A level that you need, or IB or Scottish Higher. History, English, modern languages, classics, they're all relevant. Even science subjects can be relevant too in the way that you work by analogy. The OLAT test tests aptitude and is a very good indicator to us of how you go about language learning and whether you'll be able to pick up the language quickly. But you can, as I said before, pick up the language from absolute scratch with the intensive language teaching we provide. In terms of employment, we've had people go into all kinds of different areas. We have a theatre producer. A number of people have gone into law or accountancy. Someone is currently studying medicine after her Jewish studies degree. Lots of Hebraists go into further study. Some go into teaching or into Jewish or Christian religious ministry. Librarianship and museum work are also options too. I think that's probably covers most things, and I would be very happy if anybody wanted to contact me about any questions that arise from this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Salvesen. We are getting close to the end of our presentation, but there is one more BA degree. That's the BA degree in Turkish, and that will be introduced by Professor Aslı Niyazioglu.
I'm Aslı Niyazioglu. I teach Ottoman history at Oxford, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to introduce our Turkish program to you. As a historian, I want to begin this introduction with a map of the Ottoman Empire. So I chose this map to highlight the significance of the Ottoman Empire for histories of the Southeastern Europe, Anatolia, Caucasus, the Middle East, and the North Africa, most of which were under the Ottoman rule, roughly from the 14th to early 20th centuries. At Oxford, we explore this multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire, and is significant for us today. We also examine its transformation to a nation state, to the modern and culturally diverse Republic of Turkey. We study literary cultures of Turkey and discuss hotly debated topics of modern Turkish politics, such as secularism, authoritarianism, and dissent, and more. And of course, what makes this exploration wonderful for me as a professor is the fact that we do it in Turkish. Our students who enter our program without knowing the language graduate with fluent Turkish, having studied Turkish history, literature, and culture from its original sources. For example, we enter the world of 16th century historians, like these in the miniature on the lower right. They're working on their books. or join communities like those in the postcard above who celebrate the 1908 Constitution. And we listen what they have to say about their world. So if you will join us, what will you study? Let me briefly introduce the program. In the first year, you will mainly focus on learning Turkish and study with Dr. Emine Çakır, who won multiple teaching awards for teaching Turkish. You will also study Islamic history and culture with professors from Arabic and Persian programs, as well as us in Turkish. The following year is the year abroad. You will spend it in Istanbul, studying at our partner institution, Boğaziçi University. And here is a view of the campus. I know it well. I was an undergraduate student there. So at Boğaziçi, in addition to improving your Turkish, you may also take excellent classes on Ottoman and Turkish history, literature, and politics in English. During the year abroad, I will also meet you in Istanbul and take you on historical walks. I'm from Istanbul myself, and I love exploring history, living in the urban landscape with my students. And these are some of the places I like walking around. So upon your return to Oxford in your third and fourth years, you may choose to focus entirely on Turkish, or you may combine Turkish with another language. And here is a slide I prepared. Please check our webpage for more information. For Turkish, in addition to taking history classes from me and languages from Dr. Çakır, you will also study literary and political texts with Dr. Laurent Mignon, who works on many interesting fields, including literatures of Armenian and Jewish communities of Turkey. We will all work very closely. Our classes are very small. As for Turkish with a subsidiary language, our students often choose Arabic or Persian, but there are many other wonderful combinations. Or you may study Turkish with a European language like French or German as a part of a joint degree. Please do check our webpage. At Oxford, we are proud to be one of the few Turkish degree programs in the world outside Turkey. And a particularly attractive feature of our program is its international student body. While there are only a few programs, there is a great need for Turkish proficiency in many exciting careers. Our graduates have found employment in a wide range of fields, from journalism to civil service in the UK and around the world. To conclude, in an age when increasing insularism has threatened the balance of the world as we know it, the study of Turkey, of the Turkish language, and of the cultures of Turkey open doors to Southeastern Europe, the Caucasus, the Near East, and the Mediterranean region as a whole. It is a pleasure to explore this world with students who are passionate about learning Turkish. So please do let us know if you have any questions, and we're looking forward to your application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Niyazioglu. And we have reached the end of our presentations for today. You are more than welcome to get in touch with us if you have questions about any of these degrees. You will find all the relevant information on our website, Faculty of Oriental Studies in Oxford. And thank you very much for watching. Bye.